Most beginner brush calligraphers use a small tip pen like this Tombow Food No Suke, which is great. But once you get good at that small tip pen, it's really tempting to switch to a bigger tip pen like this Tombow Dual Brush that you can do more fun techniques with. The problem is it's not actually that easy to just switch from a small pen to a big pen. Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 most common mistakes that beginners make when switching from a small pen to a big pen and help you totally avoid them in your own work. Let's jump right in. In this video, I'm using Rhodia paper, and if you've never heard of Rhodia paper, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but you need to know about it, and I have a whole video about it. So make sure you go watch this. Either pause this video and go watch it now, or come back to it later. So Rhodia paper, and then I have a Tombow Food No Suke, which is my small tip example, and a Tombow Dual Brush, which is my big tip example. So the first mistake that people make is that you're writing too small. So with a small pen, you're used to writing pretty small, obviously. So with this small pen, you might be writing somewhere around this size. And frankly, I'm being generous here. Normally, you'd be writing even smaller than this, but I want to make sure that you're able to see it on the video too. So if this is the approximate size that you're writing with a small tip pen, and then you try and do that exact same thing with this big tip, it's going to end up looking really dang messy. You just end up kind of running over yourself and not having enough room, and it just looks really squished. So this is one of the biggest problems I see, is that a lot of people don't realize that when you switch from a small pen to a big pen, you need to write a lot bigger. So if with your small tip pen you're writing about 4 squares high, with your big tip pen, you basically want to double that. So you're actually going to be writing more in this ballpark. And it's going to end up looking a lot neater. So that's mistake number 1. Make sure that when you switch between a small pen and a big pen, you're also switching the scale on which you write. Quick note here that you'll probably often see pretty much any instructor giving you an option for a small pen workbook or a big pen workbook. And shameless plug for my own, I have small pen workbooks and big pen workbooks, and this is the reason why. So if you're using a small one, traceables are the scale for the small pen, and if you're using a big pen, the traceables are scaled for the big pen. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, mistake number 2 is changing the angle of the pen. For some reason, I constantly see beginners in my in-person workshops doing this one. So when you're working with a small tip pen, I've got you nailed down. You're holding it properly, and then all of a sudden, when you switch to a big tip pen, you completely change the way you hold it. So here's the problem. With a small tip pen, we've talked about this in other videos. I'm sure a lot of you have heard me say this. You want your pen to be on roughly a 45-degree angle to the page, and then you want to make sure that your pen is perpendicular to your page. So if my paper is this way, I don't want my pen to be underneath like this. See how my pen is parallel to the page? I actually want my pen to be perpendicular to the page, okay? And it should be at roughly a 45-degree angle to the page, so that when you write, you're able to get a nice thick downstroke. Real original, eh? My hellos and my highs. Can't really think of anything else to write. So that's how you should be holding your pen when you have a small tip pen. For some reason though, when people switch to a big tip pen, they just naturally want to hold it at more of a vertical angle, which is not going to work very well. If you try and write on a more vertical angle, you're only going to be able to get a downstroke about this thick, but really you want to be able to get it about this thick. And in order to do that, you have to keep your pen on that 45-degree angle to the page. So make sure that when you switch from a small pen to a big pen, you're still following those rules. 45 degrees to the page and not parallel. You want it perpendicular. All right, and mistake number 3, this is hands down the most common one I see and the most of a game changer when you figure it out. So when you're using a small pen, you can get really, really nice thin hairlines, aka upstrokes. So if I'm doing a line of upstrokes in my small tip pen, I can make them really, really thin, like this. And they look really great when you do that with a small pen. The problem is when people switch to a big pen, they naturally try and make their upstrokes as thin as it was with the small pen, which is just impossible. So if I were to try and make an upstroke that thin with this big pen, it ends up looking really choppy and shaky, and it just will never ever be as thin as it was with the small pen. It's just the nature of using a bigger tip pen. Your upstrokes are going to be thicker, but your downstrokes are also going to be thicker. So if this was my upstroke with my small pen, and this is my downstroke with my small pen, then this should be the upstroke with my big pen, and this should be the downstroke with my big pen. You see the difference? So as soon as you stop trying to make your upstroke as thin as it was with the small pen, you're going to end up with a much more consistent upstroke, and it won't be as shaky. The problem I see a lot of the time is people trying to make their upstroke too freaking thin with that big pen. That was actually a pretty good one. But a lot of the time it ends up looking really, really shaky like this. And realistically, your upstroke should actually be way thicker in relation to that small pen, but it's still really thin in relation to your downstroke with that big pen. So it's all relative. Just remember, stop trying to make your upstrokes quite as thin as they were with the small pen. They're naturally going to be thicker. So were you making any of those mistakes? I'm willing to bet that if you've switched from a small pen to a big pen, you've at least made one of them. If you have, tell me down in the comments, because I'm always curious to know which one of these moments gave you the most of an aha. And if you like this video, make sure you subscribe because I put out 2 new videos like this every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.